Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. McGregor, can you begin with a little bit of basic background on yourself, to start with where and when were you born?
I was born in South Bend, Indiana, February 5th, 1943.
All right, and was your father in the service at that time?
Yes, he was. My dad was a career soldier. He was killed in the Second World War, but when he died, he was in the Army about 19 and a half years.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the old horse cavalry. He was in the cavalry when they gave up their horses for mechanization, and then he transferred. He was with the forming 2nd Cav Division, which he left. He had a problem with, apparently he had a problem with one of his commanding officers or something, and so then he was too old for a combat command, so he was given a task of forming an amphibious tractor company, and he deployed to Europe and was killed on D-Day in Normandy. So,
all right. I didn't know they were actually using amphibious tractors in D-Day, but
well, they're trucks.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
the ducks.
The ducks, yeah.
Okay.
Ducks.
Because there were actual amphibious tractors
Yeah.
that were used in the Pacific and later in Italy. But
Right.
all right.
Yeah.
So he got in there anyway. All right.
Yeah.
Now, so your mother was living in South Bend then. Was that where her family was?
Yes, it was. Yeah. In fact, they met. It's kind of crazy. He was an enlisted man for until sometime in the mid-30s, and he got commissioned. But he was in the 7th Cav, and one way or another, he ended up at Culver Military Academy as a ROTC instructor. Back then, I guess kids, when they got out of, if they went to it was a high school, but they got commissioned at the end of their high school,
right. And
he was a polo coach, taught horsemanship and then military tactics, and then he also bought horses for their Black Horse troop, and they met at a Halloween party. He came with his, in his uniform, and that, and my mother commented on what a clever costume it was, and he said, it's not a costume. And that's how they met, and they got married, and then they lived in Culver until before our involvement in the Second World War. They would start, I guess, expanding the Army.
Yeah, they were building up the Army.
And he was at Fort Hayes in Columbus, Ohio for a while. That's where my brother was born in 41. And then he went out to Fort Riley for the 2nd Cav. And then when he went to Fort Riley, my mother moved back home with her parents and then lived there and then he passed. Then he was killed, and
right.
We then just stayed there. So.
Okay. And so then you grew up in South Bend?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you finish high school there?
Yes, I graduated from South Bend Central High, and then I went to, we didn't have much money, but I found out I got VA assistance for going to college. I got War Orphans Education Act, so I went to college. Went to 2 years at the Indiana University Extension Center in South Bend, and at that time you could only take 60 hours there. And then I finished up my last 2 years at IU Bloomington.
All right. And then what did you major in?
I majored in history.
Okay. And what were you planning on doing with that?
I didn't know. I liked history. I thought I'd like to teach, so I used some of my electives and took some education classes. And then when I student taught, I decided I didn't want to teach. And when I graduated, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I took a job with the Public Health Service as a syphilis epidemiologist. Good background for history.
Of course. What did they actually have you do for that?
Well, you would interview people who were diagnosed with syphilis. Back then, anybody that was diagnosed with syphilis, it was reported to the county health department. And we worked for the U.S. Public Health Service on loan to I worked in Ohio to the state Ohio Department of Health, who then in turn lent us to various county health departments. We would interview people who had the diagnosis and try to trace the source and spread of the disease, and then, contact the people that they may have been infected and get them tested and prophylactically treat it. And
then how long did you do this kind of work?
Just about a year.
Now, did you get drafted while you were doing
Well,
that?
no, the draft is kind of an interesting thing. When I got out of school, well, in college, I had a student deferment. I got out, and I graduated in 1965, and Kennedy had issued an executive order exempting married men from the draft.
Right.
So then when Kennedy was no longer on the scene, so that was going on. I was going to get married in August 21st. We were scheduled to get married, and then my buddy LBJ came out and said, hey, if you had to be married before the 14th of August to not be drafted. So the invitations were printed, so we had to scratch out the 21st, right into 7th, and move it up our wedding day. And so, okay, now I thought I'm clear. And sometime after I got married, it was he rescinded that part of the thing and said the only way you can get out now is if you were a father and had a child or a pregnant wife. So it looked like and I couldn't get a deferment, an occupational deferment on with the Public Health Service, so we moved back to South Bend, and just in case I got drafted, Madeline's my wife, could be close to family. And then I took a job in South Bend with Bendix Aerospace, and we made fuel controls for the what became the the F-111. Back then they called it a TFX for whatever reason that was. I figured, gee, I'm making the tools of war. I worked in production control, that I could get deferred. Nope, sorry, kid, you can't. So, and I got my draft notice in September of '66, and I had reported. I reported in, I think, November 15th or something like that.
Okay. And where did you report to?
Well, we went down to the local Reserve National Guard Center. Always, the Army does always this stuff in the early morning hours. It's dark, and bid farewell and boarded buses, and then we went to the Chicago Induction Center, and were processed there for part of a day, and then put on a train and sent down to Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
All right. And what kind of facility was Fort Campbell, or what was it? Did it have a particular area that it trained for? Or? Well,
Fort Campbell, it was a training center, I guess, in the First World War and the Second World War. The training center was just reactivated, I think, the summer of '66 there. But it was home for the 101st Airborne Division. They were there, so we had basically World War II barracks. This a common two-story clapboard-sided cold barracks.
Right. Yeah, because Kentucky in November is not necessarily all that warm. Now, what did the basic training consist of at that time?
Well, basic training was an 8-week program, which the purpose was to, you're not in the Army to wipe your enemy's ass. You're there to transform a normal, complacent citizen into a soldier. Started out with the basics. We did a lot of close order drill, manual of arms. Then progressed to spend a lot of time on bayonet fighting, hand-to-hand combat, marksmanship, a lot of always physical training in there. Let's see.
How much emphasis was there on discipline, following orders?
Well, you did that. It was communicated to you very clearly that you're here. You'll do what you're told to do when you're told to do it, and we never were assaulted physically, but verbally we were, and usually the people that were disciplinary problems were they were volunteered for hand-to-hand combat demonstrations and bayonet fighting demonstrations, and go into now you can go into the building where they have the tear gas without your gas mask instead of with your gas mask, just see what it feels like, and those kinds of things. But it was again, my training, there were probably, I would say, 80% of the people in my basic training company were reservists and National Guards guys. You know, so they had something to do with theirs. We didn't have any disciplinary problem. There's a few guys thought they could get out by, you know, peeing their bed or whatever, so they just gave them rubber sheets. And a few guys, two guys didn't follow any hygiene rules, but then, you know, the recruits took care of them. You policed yourself. But.
Okay. Now, the fellows who were guard and reservists, were they sort of a little bit older like you were? Or?
No, they're just same age. You know, you tried to, you know, the Guard and Reserves had a very long waiting list to get in at that time because, you know, you beat the draft that way. And so, you know, a lot of these kids would get on the list when they're 16 or 17, and, you know, then they get...
So you were still kind of an old man then among the trainees?
Yeah, I was just a few months short of being 23 years old when I got drafted. Yeah, there were a few of the draft fellows that were drafted were about my age, but most weren't.
Okay. Now, after 8 weeks of basic, what do you do next?
Well, it's really kind of interesting. I have to backtrack a little bit because I was when you get drafted. You go down there, then you're in a reception center for about a week. You're processed, and they do extensive physicals and various testing, aptitude testing, preference testing, and that kind of thing. And then they slot you with an MOS. So they slotted me with an MOS for I was supposed to be a personnel specialist. But there's a problem because I got drafted, and my pay was $90 a month, of which they took $50 out. Added $45 to it, which said my wife got allotment of $95. Oh, we had a $65 a month car payment, so it was kind of tough. One of the tests we took was the OCS preference test. So I took that, and it was really a crazy test. I mean, you could just see what they were looking for. It was like 100 forced choice questions. You know, I would rather A, go to the opera or play football. You know, I would rather, you know, read a good book or go shooting with my friends. And so I just answered all the macho answers, regardless of how I felt. So, oh man, they thought I was going to be General Grant, you know. So I was OCS qualified, and then they told me that, gee, you have you're paid as an E5 while you're in OCS, which was a lot of money. And then your wife gets a housing allowance and all this. So I didn't have a physical profile, so I opted for OCS, and I had to pick a combat arm. So my first choice, I think, was armor, infantry, and artillery, in that order. During basic training, during my time there and communicating with my wife, then my wife lets me know that she's pregnant. She was about a month pregnant when I got drafted, you know, when I reported. So if we would have known that, you know, I would have beat it. And she said she was able to get by. We, you know, just do your 2 years and get out. So I thought I dropped OCS in basic training. Well, come to find out, I didn't. The paperwork didn't get through, so I got orders to go to pre-OCS AIT, Advanced Individual Training, in field artillery at Fort Sill. So I said, well, I don't want to go to OCS. Well, too bad. You can't drop it here. You got to drop it over there. So I went to Fort Sill. Make a long story short, I dropped it. That's fine. Okay, you don't do your training here. Just go across the street and do your training. I said, well, what happened to the personnel specialist? Too bad.
Well, now you're in the artillery.
Now I'm in the field artillery, yeah.
All right. Now, what sort of condition was Fort Sill in? Because that, too, was an old base and a big artillery center from World War II. What did that look like?
Oh, beautiful. Well, they had some old barracks, but we were in our training area. It was brand new barracks, had squad bays instead of, you know, just the open things of bunks. I think there were 4 of us in a little squad bay, and just, you know, night. I think it was air conditioned. It was really nice barracks, and it wasn't as physically demanding as basic training was. We ran every day, did the daily dozen, but you know, that was about it.
All right. And then what did the training program itself consist of?
Well, I was, the MOS they gave me was 13 Echo 20, I think it was, Field Artillery Operations and Intelligence. And basically, it did two things. It trained you to basically be a forward observer, to identify targets and call fire in on targets, and it trained you to take the targeting data that the forward observer calls in and calculate quadrant and deflection, which way the gun barrel will be, horizontally and vertically, and what charge so you can shoot and hit the target. So it was more of the cerebral part of field artillery. I didn't have mostly classroom work, and I had kind of an edge because during high school and my first 2 years at college, I had an uncle who was he was a civil engineer for the local power company, and then he had a business on the side where he would survey houses for the mortgage closing process. So, I knew direction, I could read maps, I could estimate distances. I always said, I always did. I may not have known where I was, but I knew where I wasn't. And so it was. And then with some science courses I had in college, I had a geology class that we really got into contours of the earth and contour maps and stuff like that. So it was. I was never that hot on math, but it was. I think I had a leg up on a lot of people. I could read a compass. I could do a back azimuth. I could take two places and figure out where I'm at. And
so you were actually being given an assignment that actually made sense.
Well, I guess, yeah. If you look at it.
I think that's about a 50% batting average on that, as far as I can tell over the course of the years. But they were giving you something that you actually had some aptitude for.
Well, a lot of people didn't, though. But it was. I'm not sure how they slot people in those. Obviously that's pre the computers that we know. They say, hey, we need X number of people, this and this, and if you have this kind of score, that's where you go. And because I had when I was in basic training, this one kid I was in with, he claimed his grandfather was a former governor of Puerto Rico, and he was a nice young kid, and he got his orders to an AIT in laundry dyeing and pigmentation at Fort Lee, Virginia, someplace, and so he would be dyeing clothes. So I'm not sure how they slotted people where they did, but I know later when I got to Vietnam, most of the people like in FDC and the FO parties were just, I call them cannon cockers, guys that just worked on the guns. They'd look for bright guys, and they would train them because they just didn't have the people.
Okay. Now, how long did the training process at Fort Sill take?
2 months.
Okay. And then what happens to you after that?
Well, again, the stars weren't in alignment for me. I had orders to go to Germany, but because I didn't have the rank, the Army wouldn't move my wife. So I wanted to stay stateside until she had the baby. I wanted to see the baby because I wouldn't have saw him for the rest of my tour. So I put in, they said, no problem, just give us a letter from the doctor estimating delivery date and da-da-da-da-da-da, and we'll take care of it. Okay, fine. So I did that. So I guess my orders to Germany, I hoped they were just being held in abeyance, but they weren't. And so then they put me in a holding battery, and basically are day laborers around the post. I did that, and then we'd go out, and then twice a week we'd go out and ambush people. Like be going out road marching for bivouac or something, and we would set up an ambush, and they'd have to practice their anti-ambush stuff, just shoot blanks and that. Did that for a couple 3 weeks, and then I got a permanent job there. I was guarding a laundromat. They had this laundromat, a nice, beautiful grove of trees, and we had I think it was 4-hour shifts or 6-hour shifts, but you would rotate. Like one day you had the morning, then you had the afternoon, then the evening, and that's all you had to do. It was right across the street from the base library. So, and all you did was sit in or near the laundromat and make sure nobody beat on the machines or tried to rip the change machine off the wall and that kind of thing. So I had the best gig in town. I'd just go to the post library, get a book, sit in the shade, and read a book for my shift, and that was it. So I said, gee, I could do my Army career this way. This is great. Then my wife had the baby. I went home, and because I hadn't other than a little Christmas leave, I hadn't had any leave since I've been in the Army. Now my son was born in July 20th. So I went home for, I think, 10 days. I came back, and they said, hey, First Sergeant wants to see you. Okay. I want to see him anyway because I had to do some paperwork to get some more money for my wife now that we had an extra dependent. He said, guess what? You're on a levy to go to Vietnam. I said, okay, thank you, Sergeant.
At this point, what did you know about Vietnam and what was going on over there?
We knew it was there, but it was, we knew the war was there, and in basic training we had, but it just couldn't connect to reality. I mean, if something's happening, if I'm not going to go over there, it's not going to happen. You don't want to accept the reality of it. But in basic training, we had one of our drill sergeants was he was profile. He was an I think he was an E7, Sergeant First Class, but he was profile. He was in the 173rd Airborne Brigade. Anyway, he got shot pretty bad in Vietnam, and he was on a profile. So I guess all he could do was train troops.
Right.
And we had this big black DI he'd lead PT every day, and they'd have this raised platform. They'd be on this platform, and he'd have a big stump on there, and he had the biggest sword you ever saw in your life. That he'd begin it every day, getting the sword, just hitting it into the stump, and then he'd yell out, "Do you know what that is?" "No, drill sergeant, what is that?" "That's Charlie cutting your nuts off." "Why is Charlie cutting your nuts off?" "Because we're weak." "What makes you strong?" "PT, we love PT." And then I get into it. So other than just that kind of stuff, it was there in my AIT class. I think we had two or three guys that got, and we had, I don't know, there were probably 50 of us. We had 2 or 3 guys that got orders that went to Vietnam, but they volunteered to go. They wanted to go. So it was just didn't think about it,
And did you follow the news or pay much attention to what was going on?
No, I didn't have the. We didn't get newspapers. In the holding battery, we had they had a day room, so we could go into the day room. But there, the only big deal was that everybody was riveted. I think it was that summer of '67, the Arab-Israeli war.
Yeah.
We had the war. Everybody was talking about that, but it was, you knew Vietnam was there, but it's not going to happen to me.
Right. Well, a lot of the official reporting at that point was still that things were going well and we were winning and so forth. And the popular media had not gotten as negative as it was going to get after the Tet Offensive, too. So it's a lot of the really strong anti-war movement stuff, or the stuff that attracted the most attention, tended to come a little bit later. So it may have been a little bit easier not to pay that much attention to it at that time. Because that's actually fairly common. A lot of the guys at that stage who go over didn't know that much.
No, it was, I knew it was there, and in fact, when I was in college, I think I was a senior, I had this one kid who was, or one guy, he had been in the service, and I went back to school, and, hey, you guys are going to end up there. You start seeing all the thing, and it was, I think, right around the time of, it was before our big involvement, it was before the Ia Drang and that with the first big
so
one.
You get DM assassinated in '63, and then more and more stuff happening after that.
But again, it was I always say I was probably the end of one generation, because as a little older, everybody in my immediate family had served in the Second World War or Korea. Of course, my dad there, and it was. I lived in a Polish neighborhood. My mother was Polish, and went to parochial school for 8 years, and a Polish parochial school. And you always prayed for Poland to be free, and it was assumed we were going to fight Russia. You boys had to prepare for this, and then we had the stupid thing of ducking under your desk every Thursday when the siren went off, and don't look at the flash, and that kind of stuff. But it was. We trusted our government. The government said this. Government was a friend, and I didn't want to go, but I wasn't going to go to Canada. I wasn't going to go to Sweden. It says I don't want to go. I don't want to leave my wife and family and this kind of thing. But if I have to, so be it.
Right.
And so I had that service, and I guess after us, and sometimes I question the anti-war protesters' real motive. I think most of them were just afraid of going into the service, period. They had but that's just my opinion.
Okay. Now, what's the process by which then they get you out? So you've gone back to your base, they say, okay, you're going to Vietnam. How long is it before you actually leave?
Well, we had to go through what they called RVN training for Vietnam. It was a lot of some classroom stuff on the history, culture of Vietnam, the political structure, their army ranks, because they had to afford, their people the military courtesy, just like, ours. Had to prepare a will. That was kind of neat. I'll never forget, we had a doctor talk to us about genital wounds. It has some of the most graphic slides in the world, but hey, regardless of what happens, you can still get it up. Don't worry about that. Okay. Then we had to. Then we kind of evolved out in the field. We had to qualify with an M16, because when I was in basic training, we still used the M14. Had to qualify with that. Did a lot of anti-ambush training. How to, what to do when you get ambushed, And then we had, in the middle of the Oklahoma prairie, they had a Vietnamese village with tunnels and that we had to secure the village, search it, and, just kind of a little preparatory stuff. Okay. So that lasted about 2 weeks. And then I went home on leave. And went home and came back, and just about a month. Which I learned later that it was a non-chargeable leave, so it was a free leave that they gave to me, so it was nice. And went home, and then, you just tried not to think about where you were going, and then you went to, then I had to report, I remember it was on a Saturday, I had to report at the Oakland, California replacement depot.
Right. And then from there, how did they get you to Vietnam?
Well, there they had and this is where I encountered some protesters, because they told us that, hey, don't worry if there's people, yelling at you or this kind of thing, just, just ignore them, but it's okay to use, physical means if you feel threatened, so basically saying if you feel threatened, you can whip them, they were kind of up the block a couple times, because we had to cross the street. There's a little bar across the street. We went to the bar, but you had, I think it was 4 or 5 formations a day that you had to go out to the parade ground, and they called off the names of the guys who were shipping, and then you got your stuff and went on a bus and went to Travis Air Force Base and got on an airplane and went to Vietnam.
Okay. Now, did they fly you straight to Vietnam, or what route?
I left. We left Travis at I think I was at the Oakland 2 or 3 days, and we left Travis at about 10 o'clock at night, and the pilot or somebody had a sick sense of humor, because as he took off and was kind of banking, you could see the Bay Bridge and the Oakland Bridge and all that loud. Then he played Tony Bennett's "I Left My Heart in San Francisco." So we went from there we landed in Hawaii, in Honolulu, early morning. I'm going to say 2, 3 o'clock. The airport was basically closed. Just walked around and refueled the plane. Then we flew to Japan, and I refueled in Japan. And they let us off the plane there at the Air Force Base there for about an hour. And then we flew into Cameron Bay and landed.
And what was your first impression of Vietnam when you got off the plane?
It was, it just opened, got out that door, the heat and humidity, boom, like took your breath away. It was, well, you didn't know what to expect, and well, I got to say, I got very, very scared because in Travis, waiting to get on the airplane, I didn't have anything to read, and somebody left a book there, so I grabbed this book and took it. And it was, I don't know if you remember the book, And Johnny Got His Gun. It was written by a pacifist in the 30s about a guy in the First World War that essentially he was just a brain, and he didn't have any limbs, didn't have any senses, and the story is his thinking back about his life, and 2, trying to communicate or make some sense of where he's at. It just scared the heck out of me. So I got I read what did I pick up here? My God. And so I got there. I didn't know what to expect. I just kind of looked out and said, "Geez, are we going to be under fire when we land?" And you don't know what to expect. But they looked. Well, they're not going to land a big 707 jet and somebody shooting at them, I don't think. And so I got out. The heat hit us bad, and it was just like any other Army base. It was just the buildings were more fragile looking. A lot of them were just roofs and some screened sides and that. They took us to a replacement area where we traveled in our khakis, had to take our khakis off and put on jungle fatigues, and then they just had us fill in sandbags to, I guess, acclimate to the climate. Did that for that day, and I think he did that the next day, and then the day after, then I had orders. I really thought I kind of lucked out because I had orders to the 1st Air Cavalry Division's 15th Administrative Company. So I thought, hey, I got it made, and somebody told him, no, all replacements go to this, and then they'll put you out to your unit. Oh, okay, gee. So, and while I was there, while I was waiting, then a guy by the name of Charlie Poor, who he was in the holding battery with me, and he shows up there. He got orders same place, So, hey, that's cool. So at least I know somebody now. And it was, you were scared, but nobody were carrying weapons. You didn't see any warlike thing. I did some fighter bombers or something at the airport. They'd be taken off and that kind of stuff. But it's just like like we're sitting here, And so then I'm not sure how we processed, but I can't remember. Waited 2 or 3 days, and then they called our names off, and Charlie and I think we were the only 2 going to the CAV. We went to the airport and got on a C-123, and they flew us to K, which is Camp Radcliffe was the base camp of the 1st CAV. They weren't, that was just their rear area. There were no maneuver units were there. So they had a new troop desk at the airport. And the airport was just like a Quonset hut without sides or front or back. It was just kind of open. And okay, fine. And this is where you're going. The truck will be by here. Jump in this truck, and they'll take you where you're going. So they took us to our. They took us to the admin company, and we had to do some paperwork. And then they got a hold of our battalion rear, and they came and picked us up and took us to the rear area. There's only like 2 or 3 guys in the battalion rear. They had a supply sergeant and a couple clerks. So we got acclimated. We drew some more equipment from there, drew our rifles. We zeroed the rifles in, and then he told us we would have to go to charm school. So everybody joining the division had to go through a jungle school, and so we hung around the battalion area for, I don't know, a couple, 3 days, and then, okay, report down to this place. So we went down there, and there was probably, again, about 30 or 35 of us. A very good comprehensive program. It was led by 2 very senior NCOs. Of course, they didn't wear any rank, but these guys were good field soldiers. And we zeroed our M16s in again. They gave us some practical hints, like, never put full 20 in the magazine because it tends to, too much pressure on the spring, it might double feed. John Wayne, you don't clip your fragmentation grenades on their weapon. You keep them in their can because they can go. So they gave us a lot of that stuff. They had booby trap courses that we'd have to go through and practice. And then we were doing active patrolling around, and then at night we'd have to secure the perimeter, or part of the perimeter. And that's where I had my first very funny incident. We were in a bunker, and I'm not sure, can I use foul language here? Okay. Did you ever hear of the fuck you lizard?
No.
It's like a little gecko, and it's has a noise like fuck you, just like that. So here, my first night in a bunker, my bunker mate and we got an M60 machine gun sitting there, and he's sleeping. I got the first tour, and I hear this noise. Wait a minute. I hear it again, and I'm thinking about the old war movies I saw as a kid where the Japs are yelling, we're gonna get you, and I got petrified. God, they're out there, come and get me. So I start blazing away. I'm shooting a good time burst, this and that. Come on and get me. I'm just going crazy like that. And all of a sudden, boom, a guy grabs me, and one of these NCOs came and grabbed me. What the hell's wrong? Cease fire, and everybody else started shooting. What the hell's happening? And I said, the bad guys are out there. They're going to tell me, they're saying fuck you to me. And he just laughed. He said, that's a lizard. Don't worry about it. I said, so I was so geeked and I was so high on adrenaline. My bunker mate and I couldn't sleep. So we just spent the night speculating on how we could import these things to the U.S. because we'd make $1 million selling them on college campuses. It would have been. So then the next morning, we had a lecture on the fauna of Vietnam. So it was frightening. That was my first night on a perimeter. You're in a war zone. There's, where the trip flares are. Your claymores are set up out there, and geez, I don't know what to expect. So then we rappelled off a tower a few times, and then rappelled out of Huey's and out of a Chinook. I think a Chinook came down on a Jacob's ladder. And the charm school was about, a week, maybe 10 days. And at that time they called it the First Team Academy because that was the nickname of the CAV, the first team. But Army likes acronyms, so it's FTA. And later they changed the name because FTA came to mean something else. Fuck the Army. And so that was there. So then we left there. The charm school, came back to our battalion headquarters, and or rear area, I should say, and the guy, the supply sergeant, most of the battalion was up north around Bong Song and in the Antelope River Valley, and he said we would be joining A Battery, 1st to 21st, which was down on Operation Bird and Fayette, extreme southeastern corner of 2 Corps. So the next day we took I'm not sure what I think it was a C5 or C7, a Caribou anyway, a very small twin engine cargo plane. There was there's Charlie Poor and I going to the same place, and they had a howitzer on there. They had and the 1st to the 21st was the first battalion to get the new howitzers. before most howitzers had split trails, and then to change it, I'm not sure how much they could shoot before they had to actually pick up the trail and move them. And this was secured by a base plate, and they could fire 360 degrees. I think it was the M102A3 or something like that. I don't know what it was. So it was. I've never seen it. It's a lower profile gun. So we kept that company and looked at that. We landed in Fayette. LZ Betty was what it was called. It was just outside of Fayette, a big airport or airfield, and apparently, and that was the rear area for a lot of the units that were on the operation. That he had the 2nd and 7th Cav was there, and I just explained the process. The Cav didn't have a heavy weapons company in their battalion. They had 4 rifle companies, and later they added a 5th company, a recon company. So they had a battery of artillery, 6 guns assigned to each battalion, and they always operated within their fans. So although they had LZ Betty. There weren't any howitzers based at Betty, and then they had two outlying LZs. They had LZ Judy, and they had LZ Bartlett up in the hills. And of the battalion, one company was always at and around Betty. One was at or around Judy and Bartlett, and one was always out in the field doing something. Now, I mean, when they were at these LZs, they would patrol during the day, set up ambushes, stuff like that, and kind of a little stand down, but not quite. And then the other company would be out in the field. So then we went to. We were just there at Betty for a couple hours, and then we. Being in the Air Cav, it had its advantages because they had a division had a lot of air assets, had a lot of helicopters, and usually there were 3 scheduled logistics runs to each maneuver element every day, morning, noon, and night. So we took the log run out to Bartlett and joined. That's where the battery's command structure was at, and. We got there and they tested us, just see if we knew what we're supposed to know, and then just got into routine. The battery supplied a FO party to each maneuver company, which theoretically had an officer, a recon sergeant, and a radio telephone operator, and I don't ever recall where there was always 3 in the party. There would be 1 or 2, at the most. And in FDC, when we were the Fire Direction Control Center would supply, or the battery would supply the people there, and a lot of times we would, if you weren't full time in an FO party, you basically were in the FO party when the company was at your base, at your thing. So they'd always have it. So between the infantry grunts and the cannon cockers, most of the guys in the battery spent some time with with the infantry companies, and they developed a good rapport and a good relationship.
Okay,
real good.
Now, how quickly did they start sending you out into the field, or did you stay in the fire direction center?
Well, I stayed in FDC till I stayed in FDC for I don't know, it may be about 10 days, and then then they'd have what we called hip shoots and raids, and these would be they both started out the same. A raid only lasted a day, and what they call the hip shoot lasted longer. That basically we would air assault in somewhere with outside the range of the howitzer. So the 105 had About 11,000 meter range. So you'd be maybe 12, 14 clicks, maybe farther away. We'd aerosoled in, they'd drop guns, and then we'd just shoot the heck out of everything and patrol. And if you didn't find anything, then you just came back. If business was good, if you will, then you stayed for a while, and you dig in and start, and then you would you'd do that. So it was I was there about 10 days, and then we went on a hip shoot. We went out to set up a place called LZ Catfish way out in the woods, and that's where I got shot at the first time. Scared the heck out of me, and the second time. But and basically what would happen is we would aerosol in with the infantry would aerosol in. We would be usually in the infantry load, or maybe the next wave. It just depended how many birds they had, and we would usually have the Black Hat with us, which was the airborne pathfinder that basically operated as a air traffic controller for the place. The Black Hat would be with us. Usually one of our senior NCOs, we call him Chief of Smoke, would be with us, and maybe an officer, maybe not. We'd go in, and then basically the Chief of Smoke would, if it wasn't a hot LZ, it was very, very easy. He would just, designate where their guns were going to be set up, and infantry would go set the perimeter, and then you would go. Then you'd come in, you dig in, and then you start patrolling.
Now, did the LZs have what sort of preparation was there? I mean, was there artillery bombardment, or does someone go in and knock down trees?
Well, usually they usually, like Catfish, usually look for open areas to go in. There, since you were out of the range of howitzers, you didn't have that. Typically, you would have a artillery preparation, much like the Second World War, or shooting at the beach before the guys land, right. And it was a good ballet, because, but like when in Catfish, they didn't have it because we were outside the range. So what happened was you had ARA, aerial rocket artillery, would work over the area, and at that time these were just Hueys with big boxes on each skid. They had, I think, each box had like 24 rockets in it, and they would go in and work the area over, and there'd be a couple gunships right behind them. Again, Hueys with real fast-firing machine guns on the skids. They would work it over. Then, as the lift birds would come in, they would be shooting, I guess, at the perimeter and everything. If you had artillery prep, they would shoot what they call the zone on the thing, and then usually a minute before touchdown. And this was choreographed. I mean, better than any ballet, it was just a thing of beauty to watch. I mean, if it wasn't so frightening that the last round fired would be a white phosphorus round, so they'd see the white, then the ARAs would come in, and then the gunships, and then the birds right behind them, and it's not like you see on TV where the helicopter settles down and guys jump off, and he's swooping in, and he might hover for 2 seconds, and you're jumping out. You could be 3 to 6, 8 feet off the deck, and you jump out and run like hell. And then everything just precision, and other things coming in, and I mean it's just remarkable to just the coordination involved in the thing. I was fascinated by that.
All right. Now, was Catfish a hot LZ, or was it?
No, it wasn't hot. It wasn't hot. It was kind of a area in thick woods all around, but it's kind of an open area. Some grass, not even elephant grass, but grass maybe a foot and a half high, and we set up there. And then that night, I had to have a guy by the name of Ray and I were going to be on radio watch starting like at midnight. So I was exhausted. I didn't sleep much the day before because I'm going in there. I didn't know what to expect, and you were scared and have some crazy feelings. We had and then dug our holes, dug the position, get everything set up. I just collapsed. I was exhausted, so I fell asleep, and I was still sleeping, and then Ray woke me up, and he just motioned for me to be real quiet and just look. And I couldn't help but notice. We were almost on the perimeter, and somebody tripped. We had some trip flares out there, and somebody tripped one of them. And and like a rookie, I look right at it, and there goes my night vision, So, and then it sounded almost like an M1 guy. Somebody lit off a bunch of rounds coming in, and it sounded like a heavier caliber than that was real eerie, just going right over my head. But Ray, and nobody fired, and Ray just said it's, Charlie just wants to see where our automatic weapons are and all that kind of stuff. Don't do anything. He's just scoping us out. You're okay. And then one of the howitzers started shooting some time fuse into the woods over our head, and that was the end of that. So. Never did find anybody, but I guess they knew we were there, and I guess they just wanted to tell us they were there.
Now, what was this Operation Bird that they're doing? What was that supposed to be doing?
Well, I think it started. Well, you got to go way back. The 2nd or 7th Cav was almost decimated in the Idrang Valley. The day after the big battle.
Right.
When they marched out in line, to get extracted. So they really got beat up pretty bad. Yeah, they were I think that's why they got selected for it. So they restaffed and got guys in there. And then there was this in the Fanthiette Valley. It was kind of in the Fanthiette area. It was kind of a rice growing area, and then you had hills, and it's kind of a self-contained enclave. It was Highway 1 went through there and the railroad went through, but neither was open. And it basically, as I understand, the Viet Cong pretty much controlled the whole area. So they started Operation Bird to go down, I guess because it wasn't, I'm not sure I don't think there are too many hardcore VC there. I don't know if there's main force battalion there or not. But anyway, they brought it down there to basically break the siege, open it up, guard the rice harvest, and that's what they did. They just started in Fanthiette and just kind of worked out and basically pushed Charlie back up into the mountains and then just secured. So I think that was, and I think they brought it. I think they let the 2nd and 7th go there to kind of just lick their wounds, and because it was phenomenal. They had, I think they were there 16 months, 17 months, and they said we had like everybody body count. There were just like, I think there were just like 34 U.S. guys killed down there, and they killed like almost 1,000, VC, or what they said were VC. So
you're in that. So they're actually in the same area for an extended period of time, which sometimes was kind of unusual for units in Vietnam to be in that place that long for a unit of that size. Was there much by way of civilian population around? I mean, you said you're protecting rice harvest.
Yeah, the city of Fanthiette was pretty big, and in fact, Fanthiette was I probably pronounced it wrong, the Nuc Nguyen's capital of Vietnam, and the fish sauce that they use, like we use ketchup, and town smelled like smelled like fish sauce. Yeah, they're there, and there's little hamlets and things out. It's out in the hills. It was all free fire zone, but it was.
What does that mean? You're allowed to shoot if you want to, or
well, anybody you see, you assume they're hostile, and you take them out. It was, and that's. I was a lot of times you wonder if anybody told the people who live there that, it's, but it was. that was it. So, yeah, the civilian population was, in fact, it was nice because we could get, as I was there, you could get a pass going to town, you know. I mean, you'd be a good soldier, you'd get the morning log bird, go back, and just so you're back out in the field at, you know, 5 o'clock or whenever he came back out, so.
And what was there to do in town?
Drink. You know, a lot of guys, I was married, I wasn't interested in it, but a lot of guys want some female companionship and drink and just hang around there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because there was a bar, it's called Rita's. They served hamburgers made out of water buffalo. You know, it was there, but they had, and it was really kind of sad in a way because that apparently was a big watering hole for the French, because the French had the story went that they had a mobile group or something based there, and it wasn't too far from the Li Hong Fong Forest, which was kind of up the coast and inland, and that mobile group was no more. You know, they pretty much got wiped out. And in fact, in Rita's, it's so funny because at Rita's, this bar, the Buddhists use a lot of symbols, and one of the symbols is swastika. So this one fella and I are in there having a couple beers, and middle-aged guy, white guy, walks in, drunk. He sees this thing, and he starts going Heil Hitler and all this stuff, and he's going crazy. And a few of the other guys in there, I didn't know them, but a few of them had been in Germany, so they start giving him a hard time in German. Telling him his mother wears combat boots in German, or wow. And so they kind of got in an argument, and the guy left. But the Vietnamese lady, Rita, I guess that was her name, said that he was in the Foreign Legion, and he was supposed to be in that group that got wiped out, but he had malaria or something and couldn't go, so I guess he just stayed there when his time in the Army was up, and he just lived there. So, but that got me to think. I said, gee, you know, there's been people doing basically the same thing we've been doing for how long? You know, that was, this was 67,
yeah. So
and
you're going back
that was
15,
maybe 15, 20 years before. You know, it was incredible. But so we'd just do that, walk around town, get a haircut. MacV had it looked like your typical courthouse in small town America. They had a big stone building that they had a little PX. You could buy a box of cigars or something, and get there once. But you'd go and get a haircut, shave. You know, you'd get a shave and a haircut for like 50 piastres or something.
And this was the place where you actually bought yourself just a notebook or something to write in.
Right.
Or something.
Yeah. I came over when I came over. I had a little notebook that I was a history major in college, so I said I'm going to keep me a diary, and it's going to be. And I had a friend who was in. He was a graduate student when I was I think I met him when I was a junior at IU. He got his master's in English, and then he had joined the Peace Corps, and he was in Iran, and then his tour was up. And then he took a job with them, stayed there, and you know we corresponded. And he, used to tell me, "Hey, this is historic times. Make sure you don't forget anything." And da 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 da. And if you write letters, having people save them, and so then in one of the markets, my one notebook was full, so I went and bought another one, a little rice paper one that could fit in a. Well, we carried Prick 25 radios, so they had to change the battery every day, and the battery came in a nice plastic bag, so I'd take the top off and then make it nice and waterproof and carry it around. Yeah. So I was able to get into Fayette. We were there from maybe 1st of October till mid-January, maybe. Maybe I got into town 4 times, 5 times, something like that. It was nice.
Were the people generally friendly, or do they not pay attention to you? Or
if they're hustling, they wanted money, they'd pay attention to you. And I I would do a little currency speculation. You know, you weren't supposed to have greenbacks, which I didn't have at that time. But, you know, we used MPC, military payment certificate. It looked like monopoly money. And they never did change it, but they always saying, well, hey, if the color changes, then your money's no good. You have a certain period of time to change it. So people were using that in the local economy. And the people didn't... so I found out early that you could, on LZ Betty, they had a I don't know what it was, bank, or you could go in and say, hey, I got MPC, I want piastas. So it was like 118 piastas to $1. So they give you like 100p note. So you go out and you trade somebody a 100p note for $1. You know, so you make 18% on your money. You know, 'cause I didn't have that much money, but you did a little bit of it. And so I'd do that. Sometimes we'd take, we got in the field, we got what they call supplemental rations, SP packs. So they had a lot of soap in there. You could sell bar soap in town for $1, you know, $1 MPC. So we take some soap in, some ammo plastic maybe, and, you know, whatever you can put in your pocket. And I wasn't supposed to do it, but do that, buy a bottle of wine or something. And
Now, during this time when you're in that area, was there really very much going on in terms of fighting, or was it just mostly you go in and out of these places? And
we got, there were really two rough incidents. We'd get harassed a lot and, you know, probed a lot, but there were two times where you could say it was a pretty not a major engagement, not in terms of the number of people involved, but the you know, the ferocity of the thing. There was one was around Thanksgiving Day. Delta Company aerosoled in, and it was kind of crazy. There was a hill, real hilly, and there's kind of a little plateau, and then the hill, a massive went up, and they could only put, I think, one chopper at a time in there. That's the only thing. So they came in, they put first one down, guys got off. Second one came down, guys got off, took some fire, it went away. Third one came down, took a lot of fire, and wouldn't go anyplace. So that was there. So the people there, they could get off the plateau. I had complete defilade from the. They had some bunkers on the hill. They had complete defilade from there, but. And in fact, that's the only time, I think, that was the only time we aerosoled it at night, because I went with the relief force to get them when we went to the base of the hill, and that worked out. But during a situation, somebody called in a napalm strike, supposedly on the helicopter, but they wanted to toast it. But of course, they hit the guys they had out in the flank, and so there were a few guys killed from friendly fire. But all the other guys, the VC and their bunkers, they were toast too. So that was one bad time, and about, I was going to say probably two or 3 weeks later, basically the same kind of thing happened again. But it was relatively all the heavy stuff. I really lucked out, because all the heavy stuff was over by the time I got there. I mean, right. Other than we just got harassed. We'd be in like LZ. I liked LZ Judy a lot. You had a lot of more freedom, and it was in the flat land, and it was. We never had that many guys there, but you know, we'd have 3 howitzers there. They'd have 4 dusters. You know what a duster is?
It's a small helicopter, isn't it?
No. Duster would be it was a Korean War anti-aircraft kind of thing. It was a tank chassis with twin 40mm cannons on. Okay. They had 4 dusters and a quad 50 there with a big berm around the perimeter. I mean, it was.
Duster with dust off, which is a different term entirely.
Yeah. But we call them duster. I have no idea what they would be. So yeah, we were pretty secure. They would, you know, we had crazy things that happen. We would get I know one day we found 4 or 5 .82 rounds within the perimeter, but they didn't pull the arming pin out.
So mortar rounds, that 82 millimeter.
Yeah. It's NBA or VC did that. So they, you know, I guess they wanted to shoot, but they didn't want to hurt anybody, so they didn't pull the arming pin out. And we found those buried, and, you know, kind of say, "What's that?" Oh, geez, you know. And then they drop a few rounds in on us every now and then, but a lot of sniper fire, but more harassment. So it was really kind of winding down. We did a lot of operations out in the woods, and you know, I found with the Cav, as we kind of get into it, when the Cav would first hit someplace, there would be some intense stuff, but after that, you know, after the initial thing, it was, you know, we don't want to mess with these guys. You know, we're going to go away, fight another day, or something, because and you know, we can kind of keep them off balance, because, you know, we literally went wherever we wanted to, whenever we wanted to. You know, it was, you know, I mean, it's a thing of I don't want to get the cart before the horse, but like when we went on Operation Pegasus, when we relieved Quezon, it was, you know, even the Marines, they were just flabbergasted that, you know, we put down, you know, 2 brigades in like 3 hours, you know, into 5 different LZs, and just, you know, and, you know, the brigades, each brigade had their direct support 105 battery with it, had their, you know, whatever other you know, associated units they have. It was just,
and a brigade is a pretty big maneuver unit for Vietnam. I mean, often battalion-sized operations.
Yeah, brigade was. Brigade was. Well, the going into Pegasus was a division. Right. We had the whole division. Yeah, brigade went three maneuver battalions.
Okay. All right. So you're in your sort of Operation Bird, sort of that goes on into very early '68. So a little bit before the Tet Offensive started.
Right.
Now, did they move you out of there before Tet started?
Yeah.
Okay.
The operation was winding down. In fact, while we were there, the 101st had a presence there on and off for a while, and then we were, in fact, we gave up some of our LZs, and we were way out in the field when they came back. They came down there, but I guess they just decided that they wanted to have the whole division together. So first part of it was the first part of January that we moved out, and we went up to flew C-130s up to English, LZ English, around Bong Song, and then my particular unit, we went out to a place that was called LZ Mustang, which was in the Onlo River Valley, and it was cold and wet, and we were there again. It was old. I guess it was an old French place, because they even had, you know, concrete pillboxes like you'd see in the movies and this kind of stuff. There was a old steel bridge over the river, but that was, you know, it wasn't passable. It was all blown up. So we were operating around there, and had kind of an unnerving time there. I was going to say, the closest I came to sheer panic was going to the bathroom. But at this place, it was when we heard about we heard the North Koreans captured a ship or something.
The Pueblo.
The Pueblo. So I didn't know what that was about. So it was about a week after that happened. Our rear area supply guys come out, and they're measuring everybody for winter uniforms. So what's this for? Well, we may have to go to Korea because of the North Korea. Well, oh, I ain't going to Korea. I signed up for Vietnam. I don't want to go someplace else. You know, that was really crazy. But we were there, and it was we get probed every night, and it was almost like, we want you to know that we're still here, but don't bother us and we won't bother you, almost, because we'd find, and I don't know what they were trying to do. In retrospect, I thank God we were out there in the middle of no place as opposed to by a city,
right.
Because that's where, all of the TET stuff started. Because I know we had I know I went out, a chopper, a log bird coming in, saw about 200 guys. And they thought they were ARVNs, but there were no ARVNs around there. So they landed, told it, so we went out. They sent a platoon out there, so I went with the platoon, and they found a mama son out there. So, oh, no, that's VC. We made record time getting back. But they didn't, we didn't have any major contact that way. We get a lot of guys, and one day we had 12, 15 of them came in on Chuhoy. The Psy-War people would drop the leaflets, you to bring this and it's your safe conduct pass, and so most of them were sicker than dogs, they had malaria or.
So you're basically getting, were they coming into Viet Cong, or were they North Vietnamese uniforms?
These were North Vietnamese, they were khaki guys,
right.
And getting probed one night, and I know I had to urinate, so I went to I left my weapon. And I got up, and we had if you're ever someplace long enough, you have what they call piss tube, So I'm taking a leak, and all of a sudden there's 3 real rapid explosions, not too far from me. Holy shit, what is this? So rather than go back to where I came from, I go out by the perimeter and jump in a hole with a guy there. And what it was we had 3 strands of wire around this place. They had one out about 100 meters, and they had one like 30 meters, and one about 15 meters away from the fighting position, whatever you call it. And fella got to, and then those things went off. Then he triggered a couple of claymores, and then they fired some illumination. But what it was is a fella came in and got to the last strand of wire and just threw 3 hand grenades right in a row. I mean, incredible. And so he was kind of laying on the wire, or what was left of him, and they shot him a couple times just to make sure. And then the next day we went out and we got the guy, and he had black pajamas, but under that he had his khakis. He was a soldier. He was an NVA guy. I always felt bad for that guy. He was, talk about bravery, incredible. I mean, I just, the guy knew he was going to die.
Yeah.
And he did it.
Well, that was they were the sappers. I mean, that was what they did.
Yeah. He knew he was going to die, and he did it. And then, he didn't have anything of military value on him, so obviously he knew he wouldn't come back. Didn't have a picture of whatever, and we dug a little hole and put him in there. And I was kind of sad about that guy. That here an incredibly brave guy. He's in an unmarked grave someplace, and never got to hold his wife again, or anything. It was, but it was just incredible, just incredible, the bravery. I never forgot about that guy. It was, and somebody say, "Hey, Mike, you do that?" No way, no way.
Yeah, well, they were willing to do that, and that's why they outlasted us in the war, at least in part. All right, you were out there for, because this again is early '68, so you were out there in the field when the Tet Offensive started up?
Yeah, Tet started, the cities were going crazy. We get orders to be prepared to move on like 45 minutes notice, and we go up to, I don't know, we probably sat there about a week into Tet, maybe not quite a week, and then we went up to back to English, and then we redeployed whole brigade, 3rd Brigade went up to Quang Tri. We flew to Quang Tri.
And that's the very far northern end of South Vietnam.
Right, that's not too far from the DMZ.
Yeah, and the North Vietnamese had come down across there and taken Quang Tri and gone into Hue at the start of the Tet Offensive. So are you part of the counterattack at that point?
Yeah, we were. We went up there. I guess they're just sending everybody and his uncle up there, and we were screening. We went to Quang Tri, and then it's the first time I road marched. Then we went down by truck from Highway 1 down to, we took over Camp Evans, which was a Marine regimental base or headquarters or whatever. We made that, we took that over and then began securing the area there. Other maneuver units like, I think it was more the 2nd Brigade, they went down into Hue or that kind of thing. Closest we got there was, we went down, again, another road march. It was really, really crazy because, you know, coming down from Quang Tri, I said, hey, that almost looked like a World War II newsreel, you know, all the people waving, they're throwing C rations at them and stuff, and but then you see the bits and pieces of other vehicles that were blown up. So we went, we had to go and block to the north of Hue. We went down Highway 1 to a river crossing. There was a bridge, I don't know, maybe 2-3 kilometers outside of Hue on the north side, and we had to secure that bridge. And on the side, it was an old, it must have been an old French fort or something, because it was built like in a horseshoe. You had a river here, the open end was to the river, but yeah, they had a lot of, again, cement pillboxes with firing apertures and, you know, French obscenities about the Army scratched into the walls. You know, it was crazy. So our job was to, we had to secure that bridge and then do, you know, fire support for whatever else was happening there. And we did that for a couple weeks, I think. And but, you know, all the heavy fighting in Hue, we missed this out. Although we had enough, we every night we'd see guys on the other side of the river. You know, with starlight scopes, we see squads of guys here and there. Some guys we captured a few guys. I don't know if they weren't NVA. I don't know if they were VC or if they were just some poor guy that the VC got, because they didn't have any weapons, but they were toting ammunition. You know, so you'd be a porter or something. Right. You know, so we get some of those guys. But we secured that bridge and got hit. They'd shoot at us. We get a lot of recoilless rifle fire into us from other side of the river. There's groves of trees and other kind of buildings, and they set up, and then we'd fire back, and we wouldn't go over there to look at them, but it was there for. And I don't know if these were remnants of the guys in Hue, or they were just trying to get away, or what. But then, but it was really kind of funny because we had, you know, we'd heard that they brought in from our strategic reserve. They brought guys in. They said the 82nd Airborne was coming in, and of course, the bridge, we'd close the bridge down at night. You know, so you couldn't cross at night. Because the road was closed, so, you know, these guys got stuck here, and so some of these guys are in stateside fatigues. You know, what am I doing here? You know, I felt sorry for these poor guys. But then, you know, we'd get, I never forget one guy. He was a truck driver. Bridge was closed. You know, I'm gonna crash with you guys. Oh, you're not gonna crash with us. We got a hole there. You're gonna do 4 hours on the perimeter. You know. Oh no, I joined the Army just to drive a truck. I don't want to. Well, okay, you stay in your truck then. I don't care. You know. So he came with us in the hole, but it was that was fine. So we'd see a lot of different people come through. A lot of Irvins come through. They wanted. I was always suspicious of people, but. You know, they'd want something shot up, and you know, we wouldn't do it. But line of VC there. Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, go get them. Do it. Do what LBJ wants you, Asian boys, doing what you should be doing. You know. So we were there for a couple weeks, and then we went back up to. Getting there was kind of fun because, well, I shouldn't say fun. And in retrospect, it was frightening at the time because we convoy now. We're going to convoy down a truck. I missed helicopters. I was uncomfortable, and we pull on the road, and then we pick up on the radio that there was a CB convoy just ahead of us that was taking some fire. So, nobody had a bugle, but there the cab goes speeding up, and by the time we got there, it was everything was over. So, okay, we're going to keep going. So our truck has a flat tire. So, but everybody else leaves. Now here we are. Holy smokes! That driver, I said, "You better hurry up and change that tire, man." So then nothing happened, but it was a lot of anxiety for a while, and then we just took off and went down. It was, I think we called that LZ Noah. Went down there, and then, well, that was over. Then we came back to around Camp Evans, and not too long after that, Operation Pegasus started. And again, I kind of missed some good stuff because we're getting ready to go Pegasus, and an in-country R&R came down, and I put in for it. I had about 6 months in about this time, and I got it. So I got to go to Da Nang while they were deploying. So I missed the initial deployment, but I missed it by a day, as it turned out, because we went, the whole division went up, and they went to, they started what they called LZ Stud, I think it was, and it, I think I don't think the North Vietnamese were expecting air cavalry, because it almost seems like they, well, you had Highway 9, kind of went from like Quang Tri into Laos, and then they had this old road, little 2-track that went off into Khe Sanh. So it seems like the North Vietnamese knew that we were going to do a relief thing at some point. So they fortified a bunch of hilltops around there on the assumption that we were going to use the road as an axis of advance, and but they didn't count on our coming in on top of them. And we went to, I'm not sure where they were. They went to Stud, and they air assaulted in someplace else. Then they went into what they called LZ Thor, which was about 5 kilometers maybe from Khe Sanh. I mean, kind of on top of a ridge, and Khe Sanh was like over there. So I had to go around that way. And I joined them. I think they went in the morning, and I got there in the afternoon. I think, yeah. So a good friend of mine was killed there. In fact, a guy, I always feel bad about it, a fellow who was doing what I would have been doing, I think. He was covering for me. He got shot by a sniper. But anyway, took over LZ Thor, and then we, this inter-service stuff. Okay, just cool your jets, hold the place, let the Marines come through. So then a bunch of Marines come up the road, and that's the next day they went in, and they probably didn't get maybe 500, 750 meters away from us or whatever, and they really hit the stuff. So then they come back, and they kept going. I don't know where they went. So then Delta Company 2nd and 7th was on Thor with us. So company commander puts together an ad hoc group. He said, let's take a stroll down the road and let's go to Khe Sanh. Anybody game? Okay. So there was somebody put a sign there, Khe Sanh open courtesy of this Delta Company 2nd and 7th cabs. We walked into there, and again, nothing happened. And came back. But that was interesting, because that was the first time I was under artillery fire from the other guys. I mean, I'd be calling in 105 fire on somebody, and my counterpart is calling in 130 fire on us. But they were. I'm not sure if they wanted to. I'm not sure if it was all that observed or what, because they could have really hit us with high angle fire, you know, shooting up, but they didn't. But of course, then if they did high angle, then we could really, the target detection guys could really figure out where they were and nail them. So they were either long or short, you know, over us. And but that was first couple 3 days they were shooting at. I guess they were. I don't know if they were in the DMZ or in Laos.
Yeah, well, they had guns in Laos. They had guns in the mountains along the Laotian border. They had a lot of stuff in positions where we couldn't hit them very well. But so did you actually walk into Quezon then?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And what was there? What did it look like when you got there?
Just any other LZ, you know, just a forward place. There's nothing pretty. A lot of bunkers, a lot of sandbags, a lot of wire, a lot of craters around there. You know, just because
there'd been pretty intense fighting there for quite some time, and a lot of bombardment and so forth. Yeah,
they were getting a lot of incoming for a lot of times, but it just you know, just like any other place. I mean, it's some of the land is really pretty, but you know, if it wasn't for a war, it'd be nice. But it was. We just went in and then scooted right back out, you know, just because I even wanted the Marines to come in, and the Marines came back the next day or 2 days later. They come back down the road. And they had guys in short pants. They had a couple Australians with them. Well, that's what they wanted. That's what they did. But it was interesting. We went. We did that, and then we went to. We pulled back. After the Marines came through, we pulled back. We went back to LZ Stud. All the cav was disengaging. And then we got selected to be the rear guard at LZ Stud, which means we didn't really have to do anything until everybody left. And we didn't really want to eat sea rations, so we had a couple guys that were good improvisers, so they took off, and they come back with that. It's kind of a funny story. They come back with a refrigerated truck. They hijacked the 3rd Brigade Command Headquarters Company, 3rd Brigade. They hijacked their mess truck. So we improvised some grills with ammo rods, and we were eating steak 24 hours a day. That was a good time. And then everybody left, and then we had to police up the place. And you know what couldn't be backhauled or wasn't worth backhauling would be destroyed and burnt or whatever. And then the engineers would do some stuff. You know, because they, like ammo boxes, the Vietnamese would use the nails. They could use them for different stuff. So a lot of times where we had a fire, they'd bury some stuff with long delay fuses on it, and so on. They were picking through the stuff, it'd go off, and that was really kind of crazy, because you know, we would a 105 round is a semi-fixed. It looks like a big bullet. You know, you have a brass case, and that you can take the projectile off and the powder charge. Well, if you on these things, they wouldn't want to backhaul the rounds. They'd backhaul the brass. So you just look for things to shoot at. Hey, we gotta get rid of 300 rounds. What, got anything I can shoot at? Well, okay, there. I heard a chicken over on that hill. Why don't you start firing? That's so. But anyway, whatever couldn't be backhauled or wasn't worth it, then you destroy it. Right. Police, we found all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was just surprising, because I think they were only there for probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most, and all kinds of stuff. So then we went back to Camp Evans, and they were already planning what they called Operation Delaware. Then was going into Aishaw Valley, and that was a hairy time. I guess we hadn't been in the Aishaw Valley for. The one thing I heard about Vietnam, even before I got drafted, was it got some bad press here that there was a camp, a special forces camp or something, was getting overrun, and they sent in a helicopter or more than one helicopter to bring the Americans out, and all these local Vietnamese people or Hmong tribesmen or whoever, they were all on the skids, and they went in there, happened to beat them off so the helicopter could take off. I remember they got a lot of bad press, and turns out that was in the Aishaw Valley. So it was. So we went there, it was a we went in. It was tough because there it was. I mean, that was the valley's not that wide, but it was really heavy, thick country. I mean, really, you know, I have a lot of empathy for these guys that were humping that their whole time, you know. And we came in a little later. They had understand the cav lost. Somebody told me like 30 some helicopters going in there, and I'm sure a lot of them auto-rotated. Nobody was killed on them, but they had like 37 millimeter anti-aircraft guns all around. It was like the NVA's rear area supply place for Hue, Da Nang.
Yeah, they had a lot of fortified caves and things like that in that area.
That whole kind of thing. But it was fortunate because, you know, the people we encountered were the rear area guys. They weren't combat. They didn't seem to be combat troops, you know. But we went in. We went in a little late, and because the weather was terrible, and they had to fly high. I mean, you know, I thought my head was going to explode. I must have had a sinus infection or something. But it felt like going up there. They were up so high that it felt like somebody put balloons in my sinus cavities and just pumped them to where it's going to, you know, pop. But we were going into what we called LZ Pepper. We were going to start that up, and they had a one bird landing pad. You can only get one bird in there. Thick stuff all over. And we're coming in, and just before we're going to get out, they get fired at. And I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if the guy, because his angle of attack was going to be coming in and then hover, and then I think he's going to have to back out a little bit and go on, because there are trees over here and a hill, the slope of the hill. And I don't know if he pushed when he should have shut what happened, but it took a little fire. He went a little more forward. His rotor hit a tree, and you know, it kind of went this way. We all spilled. I mean, he wasn't more than 5-6 feet off the deck. We all, you know, the door gunners, and there were like 4 of us in there. Oops.
Turn off your cell phones.
I don't know who that was, but so we spilled out of that, and then the crew got out. That the pilot and the co-pilot got out, and you kind of went up, but it closed the LZ, so now we're stuck there, and we had to make the pad a little bigger, and finally they extracted the helicopter and that. But it was hairy. It was thick stuff, and I'm not sure if they really knew what the heck they were getting into. Well, so what they wanted to do was secure the hills on both sides, and then they were then we could support and sweep the thing, and that kind of thing. But it was grossly thick, and we had trees that looked like telephone pole, you know, about a couple 100 feet high, and you hit one with a machete, and the machete just bounced back at you, you know, just harder, you know, all heartwood or something, just harder than heck. And so it just C4 and det cord and that, and we just kept doing that, and I had and then we kept getting people coming in. We got a lot of NVA guys would come. They wouldn't even know we're there. Just, and that's why I say I think the rear area we surprised them, and they were trying to get back to wherever, go back to Laos or something.
So what happens when they show up?
Well, you shoot them,
right,
or whatever, and you know. But it's just ones and twos and that. And in fact, I was taking a dump in some real high grass. It was kind of a probably, I don't know, maybe an area 50, 60 square feet. It wasn't much, but the trees all around and that. And so I was taking a dump in this grass. The grass was about as high as me, about 6 foot high. And wind was blowing, and the grass was brown. And I'm looking, and the grass is moving a different way from the thing. And here, 2 NVA guys in their khaki uniforms, like 7 or 8 feet from me. They look at me, I look at them, oh shit, I'm dead. You know, I'm dead. You know, the guy's swinging his rifle over, and then all of a sudden, poof, they're gone. The black cat knew where I was, and he took him out, but he hoped that he said, "Geez, I sure hope you were still squatting." He said, "He didn't want to hit me." Oh God! So that was the closest I came to, I think, really losing it. But I mean, and they had no idea I was there. Obviously, I didn't have any idea they were there, and that was kind of indicative of the people. You know, they'd just be walking around and trying to get to Laos. You know, because Laos was just over there, and we were firing like hell into Laos too. So you know, I figured if the guy is, you know, there's a line on the map that said.
Well, shouldn't they have figured out at some point that you guys were there? I mean, if you bring in helicopters and things like that, and they've got positions around there. Well, I don't know, how long did this keep going on? It was just for a day or so where this was happening?
No, it was probably a week, 10 days. We're getting these stragglers coming through or by there, or you know, and they probably figured that there's more in the on the valley floor. That's where most of the stuff was happening. Right. And so, hey, we're going to go up in the hills and then walk the hills to, you know, where we're going, because, you know, like we couldn't even have a cohesive perimeter. We just threw branches and brush and all the stuff that we cleared out, just make a brush pile so nobody could come through it, you know.
Well, about how many guys were you actually with at this point? Was it a company or less than that?
No, there'd be we had 3 howitzers there. Yeah, because they lost one coming, and 2 were up on Signal Mountain. So we had 3 howitzers there. That might be 24 guys. Had maybe 2 or 3 squads of infantry with us. Maybe a squad of engineers. Okay. That was it.
So not a really big post by any means.
No. Most of the when I talk about LZs and that kind of thing, other than Stud and my Camp Evans, nothing was over a company size. You know, it was always a smaller unit. You know, because you're spread out all over heck. You know, it wasn't unusual that a battalion could have. Their area of operation could possibly be, 90, 100 square miles. You know, it was a lot of ground.
All right. But in the meantime, the enemy does not seem to have had a very clear idea where all of you were, what you were doing. I mean, there were other operations where they seem to have a much better idea and they know what they're doing. But in this case, at least when your division came in, it may have hit them when they weren't really expecting it.
Exactly.
It may have taken a certain amount of time to figure out what was going on. Well, how long did you stay in that area then?
A couple weeks, 3 weeks. Yeah. And then we went to an area east of Camp Evans between Highway 1 and the South China Sea. I call it the beach. It was, pretty much like ground like around Lake Michigan, real sandy, a lot of little creeks that break off into the, eventually into some inlets into the South China Sea and that kind of stuff. A lot of graveyards. The street without joy that Bernard Fall called it.
Right.
So then I spent the rest of my time there.
And so what were you doing there?
Just screening the area, securing the area, screening it, operating, just search, company-sized operations going around. A lot of NVA activity, and there were probably 5 kilometers south of this LZ was a huge Vietnamese cemetery graveyard, probably covered 5 or 6 square kilometers, and there was at least one NVA regiment in there. They were fooling around.
Well, if they were there, I mean, how was it that they were allowed to stay?
Well, that's the question we always asked. They were, maybe 10 clicks away from a Marine regimental base, and then we find these guys there, but they blend in. They do their thing, and.
Well, did they have sort of tunnels or things in that sector?
Oh yeah,
or?
yeah. And each one, their graves were like mounds, big mounds, and a lot of them were bunkers, and there were tunnels, and they found a hospital, underground hospital there, and all kinds of stuff.
Now, were you regularly patrolling, trying to find them or flush them out? As that was part of what you were doing? Right. And
get to an area, and it was kind of crazy because it would have been the 5th Mechanized Infantry Division, or part of the 5th, came into that area. I don't know if they deployed from the States or what, but they came. I don't know, they had a beach, they had a place further north, and I mean, it was a perfect area for mechanized stuff. I had no idea why they had the air mobile people there. It was great to run around with a track or a tank or something, and they came down a couple times by us, and then they went back, but it was just holding secure. And
about how long did you stay there?
Till I came home.
Okay, which would have been?
September.
Okay, so sort of several months then. The same
yeah,
place.
we after the Ashaw Valley, we went basically to the beach, and I got called to the beach, and we stayed there. Stayed there the whole time.
Now, over the course of that time, did you ever actually get hurt yourself or wounded in any way?
Yeah, I got when I was at LZ Noah again, going to the bathroom. I was up, and a recoilless rifle or a round or an RPG or something hit not too far away, and a concussion threw me into barbed wire, cut up my hands pretty bad. Nothing, get a shot and get about 10 million units of bicillin, and hopefully you don't get an infection, and that was there. But I had that, and one other time I got a little piece of shrapnel on my finger. But other than that, it was
nothing too serious.
No serious wound, nothing that required hospitalization or anything else. So.
Okay. Now, over the course of the time that you spent in Vietnam, how much contact did you have with home?
Well, my wife would try to write me every day, and my mom. I lived with my mom lived with a widowed sister, so. And I grew up with them, so I always told people. I mean, today it has a different context. I said I didn't have a mom and dad. I just had 2 moms, And people today, oh, really? It's one of those things. But no, it wasn't. But they'd write periodically, and I'd get mail was usually pretty good, but sometimes, especially if you moved or redeploying someplace, it took maybe a week or 2 to catch up with you. But and I'd try to write home. As often as I could. Sometimes it was I could write every day. Sometimes maybe once every 10 days. Just.
Would they try to follow you and keep track of where you were?
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure. My brother may have, but he was he was a former Marine. He didn't serve in Vietnam, but he got out before Vietnam started up. But I'm not sure. I really don't know. I never talked to them about it.
Did you have any sense that they were worried about you, or they'd follow the news and be afraid of what might be happening to you, or anything like that?
Yeah. I think I think in a lot of ways it was a lot worse on my wife and the people back here because they really didn't know what was happening. And they would. You saw it on TV all the time and on the news, and they'd have the score box. The score count and all that. So it was. I think it was a lot tougher on them. And I did see when I was there. I did see my wife once. I was in country about 9 months. I got my R&R, and I went to Hawaii, and then she came over and met me there. So saw her for about a week.
What was it like to be in Hawaii at that point and see her after 9 months in Vietnam?
It was great. It was good. It was the old stereotype of geez, I was more comfortable sleeping on the floor than in the bed, and I like the bed, but it was like it took somebody out of a primitive condition, and we basically lived in the field all the time. Didn't even have our own clothes. Every once a week they'd bring a mail bag out and they'd pull a top and bottom, put them on, and throw the old ones out. Somebody would, maybe that guy I was in basic with, that Puerto Rican guy, maybe he was doing the laundry, I don't know, but they would get that done, and we would do it. So it was, getting caught up on, I was a little paranoid about traffic and people and, that kind of thing, but we had a great time, and the people in Hawaii were just tremendously gracious, tremendous. I mean, as if I didn't wear a uniform, but, they knew where I was from, and hotels gave us discounts, restaurants gave us discounts, free drinks. It was a wonderful experience.
How hard was it to go back?
Terribly hard, because it's kind of funny because I don't know if other people had this same thing, but that you have a life, there's something else there. But the longer you're away from it, the more abstract it becomes, and your present reality is, is, and always will be, that kind of thing. And then, you kind of just compartmentalize your homesickness and your stuff. You have it, you read a letter, and that kind of stuff. But it's like that emotional connection it becomes weaker and weaker as time goes by, and then now you have it again, and oh geez, you don't want to leave. And that's why I have tremendous admiration for these guys today that are in Afghanistan or Iraq, because I don't see how they do it. They go out on patrol, we're in a firefight, and then at night they're talking real time with their wife, and the kids telling them about their little league ball game. I would just lose it. I would be, I just can't imagine that. Because it took you took you a little time to become a good field soldier to begin with, and you get in a routine, and you have it, and sometimes. When I was there, they start sending tape recordings, and I know one of the guys had bought a little battery tape recorder, and I know that first time I heard my wife sent me a tape, I must have written to her and said, hey, they got tapes, or they found out or something. I can't remember how that happened, but boy, that really bummed me out, hearing the voice and hearing the goo goo gaga of my little son, and this. Holy smokes, there is something in life without leeches and bugs and snakes and bad guys and primitive living and all that kind of stuff. It's so it's. It was very, very hard coming back, and I know I came back and I talked to First Sergeant. We got a new First Sergeant just before I left. Well, when we were up at Quezon, we got a new First Sergeant, and I come back, told him I'm not going to do anything dumb anymore. I'm going to play it safe, and He said, I understand, Mac. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I won't give you a hard time. So okay, thanks. But it took me a while to get out of that. Then it was kind of interesting how quick that other identity, that other reality, then absorbs you again too.
And you had about 3 months left then. This day. All right.
Yeah, I came back from Hawaii probably mid-June, and then I got out in September.
Okay. Now, did you spend the full time that you had been drafted to serve, or did you get out a little early?
No, I got when I went to Vietnam, they had what they call the 90-day drop. If you had less than 90 days to do in the service, you would get out when you came home. I had a total of 22 months when I got out. While I was there, they changed it to, I think, 6 months, 5 or 6 months, because they were getting, so you're a drafted guy, you got, after your basic AIT, your home leave, your Vietnam training, you probably got maybe 6 months, 7 months at the most in, and you go to the country and then you come back. What kind of soldier are you going to be? What are you going to send me to Vietnam? Forget it. I'm not going to shine my shoes. I'm not going to do this stuff. It's so I think they probably did that on a kind of a self-defensive method to get out. But no, I got out right away. I was landed in the United States at Fort Lewis, Washington at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and I signed out of the Army at 10:30 that night.
Had anybody made any effort to suggest that you re-up or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Well, when I first got to the unit, I know that I said they tested us. Okay, I mean, just gave us a situation.
Right.
What would you do? How would you do this stuff? So, and I'm not sure what all they had in terms of records on me, but I know the company commander or battery commander, when I got there, after the test, he took me to the side and said, well, boy, you can go to OCS. That's still open for you. If you want, you'd be back in Oklahoma in a week. Well, thank you, sir, but no, I just not interested. And then the executive officer he would normally not pull radio watch, but he pulled for about a week and a half. He pulled radio watch with me, and he was trying to talk me into. I said, no disrespect, but the only way I'd take a commission is with the proviso that I could resign it the next day and leave the Army. So that's because my dad was he had a regular Army commission,
right,
and he was killed. And if my brother and I, if we met the academic criteria, we could have gotten an appointment at any of the service academies we wanted to go to. But that was off my radar. I wasn't interested in it. And then that's one of the things when we were out processing in Fort Lewis, we had two real sharp-looking Army recruiters come in, and they had to talk to you, give you the re-up stuff. And they phrased it well. It was, hey, we know, hey, we're the re-enlistment guys, and all the boos and catcalls and all that. I say, oh, yeah, well, I don't know how you feel, but once you get out in that real world and it's if it's not what you think it is, think about the Army. We have, you guys, you did your time there. You can pick schools. You can, and you don't have to be a grunt. You don't have to run a tank. You don't have to cock a cannon. There's a lot of other things you can do, and we love to have you in the Army. So if it looks, we all. For those of us coming back in '68, we had this little ditty. We'd say the Golden Gate in '68, the bread line in '69. And we always do that. So I'm sure there was a few guys there, and we had guys that re-upped while they were in Vietnam. They either re-upped or extended for another tour because they were so desperate to get a leave home or something, and they did that. But it was. I don't know of anybody that re-enlisted
Okay. Now, in the Vietnam era, one of the things the military tried to do to maintain, I guess, combat effectiveness was they would rotate men in and out of units individually. So you join your unit as a replacement, and it's still out there doing what it's doing when you leave it. Now, did that work fairly well for you in the sense that you were joining people who knew what they were doing and they could show you? And
yeah, it worked, but as I said, it was basically a unit of strangers. Because the unit would deploy over there. Let's say I think the Cav first went over there probably August to September of whenever, 65 or whatever. So that year anniversary, every August or September, they're churning people. Okay, you get a new cast of characters, but then you're replacing your casualties. A lot of the Cav guys, when they originally came over, they didn't have a full year. Some may have had 6 months to go, some may have had 3 months, some may have had 9 months. So they were churning. You joined the unit. And we even had guys that we would get guys we were on the beach, and we got 3 or 4 guys from the 4th Infantry Division that they had like 6 months left in the 6 or 8 months left. So they switched. They came to us, and we gave them somebody that had maybe a year. I don't know how, but it was a constant. It was a constant kind of rotation. It was most of the new guys would just learn by watching, and some had, like I was fortunate to have, I had a couple tremendous mentors. I had Ray, this one guy I was with on Catfish. He taught me a lot, and then I had a senior NCO, Sergeant Schenkel, who did, he was a good soldier, and they took me under their wings and did that. Most of the guys, you only associate it with the guys that you were directly involved with.
So in your immediate unit or the ones you were assigned to,
And quite frankly, I think that rotation policy, and at the higher levels, it got ridiculous. I mean, like battalion command structures, they would totally change every 6 months. Because people wanted their ticket punched, and they wanted a combat command, and I know when I was there, when I was on the beach, or maybe just before the beach, we got a totally new command structure. They comes CO, XO, all the S1, 2, 3, all these guys, intact from a unit in Germany. It's right there, and then they're doing crazy stuff like. Now they have promotion boards. Give me a break, You go there, and then the guy's doing his job out in the field, but he has to go to a board and answer some stupid question about how many cans of shoe polish he has to use to spit shine his shoes, or just stupid stuff. And I think hindsight's always 20/20, but I think that policy cost a lot of guys their lives, because I mean nobody learned by their mistakes. They're making the same mistakes over again, and expecting people to do stuff that they might not be able to do. But and like command and control, I never other than on a couple LZs, we had a couple visitors. Once we had Abrams come by. When we were out on the beach, Abrams and Tolson, who was a CAV commander, he'd come out, see the boys for half an hour, and they leave. But on active command kind of thing, I never saw anybody above the rank of captain. And most of these guys were, they're probably my age, ROTC kids, graduated from college, 21, 22, second lieutenant for maybe 8 months, first lieutenant, then. They want another bar. Okay, I'll take they finish their basic course and off or whatever. So it was, and I can understand part of it because we all hated Charlie. You know what I'm talking about when I say Charlie? Command and control helicopter. I mean, they're always over you. You have this big area of operation, so the battalion command structures up there going around, they're flying around, it's getting. I don't know, I think they wanted to see how many oak leaf clusters they could get under air metal or something. And, but then at night, hot showers, nice bed, grilled steaks, some good scotch, maybe a nice bottle of wine with their meal, and, geez, I'm roughing it, I'm in combat. Then the next day, they're back out again, and here the poor guy had no idea what it's like out there,
Yeah, in a lot of units or areas, the divide seems to have been between kind of captain and major. If you're the captain and you're out there in the field with the line units, then you know what it's like to be there. But if you're the guy in the helicopter or back at headquarters, you don't.
Well, and part of it, I think, is because of nature they were so spread out. But it's, you really didn't have much contact other than when you went back to a rear area for for some reason, if you had a dental problem or in and out on R&R or stuff like that. But there was a lot of resentment. I mean, everybody over there got the same $65 a month combat pay. And somebody is I'll give you a little story about it. My first year back, my wife's mother was one of 13 children, and they have a huge Christmas party. In fact, they used to have to rent a hall. So one of my wife's cousins married this guy. He was graduated from Notre Dame, was an engineer, some kind of engineer, and he was in ROTC, and he was in Vietnam. And at this Christmas party, she was bemoaning the fact that he hadn't called home in a week. You know, they had these Mars calls. And so I said, gee, what's he doing? And, oh, yeah, he's keeping busy. He's like on 2 softball teams, and he's in a tennis league, and, you know, this kind of stuff. And my wife just about lost it. What are you worried about? You know, that kind of thing. So there was just I guess maybe I felt it more than most guys. I'm not sure, but I thought there was a tremendous inequity, like with, you know, here in Air Cav, we were in the air more than paratroopers were, but paratroopers got jump pay. You know, to me, they should have taken the combat pay, you know, the $65, and if you were an infantryman, you should have got probably $500 a month, you know, and if you were counting bullets someplace, you know, maybe you got $15 or something that way, because, and it was just 2 different worlds. It was, you know, one world was the Army, you know, the typical stateside kind of thing, and your badges of rank, and and this kind of thing. I'll tell you a little story about that. I think it was when I was coming back from an R&R. I'm not sure if it was in country or whatever, but anyway, I teamed up with this in Unkay, this black kid, his medic, went at 8th Cav, and transportation was all screwed up, and we couldn't get from Unkay up north. So they routed us through Cameron Bay. So you probably have a better deal to getting a flight there. Now, you know, you're in a field unit. You don't have your own clothes. You just pick out a pair of pants from the mailbag and a shirt, and no name, no badges of rank, anything. The only thing we had was wore a soft hat and had the big yellow Cav patch stitched right on the top of it. So we're in Cameron Bay, and obviously we stick out like a sore thumb because we have the jungle boots black and the green. Well, our boots were white because all the color was bleached off. We had low priority to fly, so there's no seats, so we sit with our back to the wall and just take a nap. We're by the gates. They told the NCO gate agent to, hey, give us a call when something opens up, you know. So I'm napping, and here's somebody's kicking my foot. And I open my eyes, and this guy starts yelling and screaming at us. It was a sergeant major, had a steel pot on, had a flak jacket on, broke starch, spit shine boots, all this stuff, and just yelling at us that we're a disgrace to the Cav and the uniform, and what's our name and serial numbers. He's going to burn us so bad that, you know, Lucifer's, we're going to think hell is air conditioned because he's going to bring so much heat on us, and just yelling and yelling and yelling. And it was just so these 2 guys walking by, pilots. They got their flight suits on and this kind of stuff. And they stopped, and they were watching us for a while. So one guy was a first lieutenant. He goes over to the sergeant major, says, Sergeant Major, I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes. So he gets them off tight, and they have kind of an animated, hushed conversation. I can't hear what's being said, and the sergeant major goes storming off. He goes walking by, and the guys come by, and he says, hey, soldiers, don't worry, the guy won't give you any more problems. I well, yeah, thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. You know, I said, if he was going to throw me in jail, I think that'd be better than where I'm going. You know, and we kind of laughed. And I said, well, what did you do to get this guy off of us? He said, well, to make a long story short, I told him that where you guys come from, you kill pricks like him. Okay, he said, you guys, where are you going? I told him and said, you guys want a beer? Yeah, they took us out, bought us a couple beers, and told the gate agent to, you know, put us on the next manifest or whatever. And we're nice guys, you know. They flew in. It turned out they flew their flew fighter bombers, I don't know what kind, but and they were interested in, and found out what I did, and I'd called in a few airstrikes, and they wanted to know how we viewed, how it was viewed on the ground, and I said, all I can say is this is like the day you saved our ass again, It's there. So they're just two different realities, and a lot of resentment about the guys that in the rear, and people were making money hand over fist on doing different kinds of things, and just like the perfectly legal 18% deal I had going in Van Viet, but it was, it was like people just couldn't understand it, and the glaring inequity was it bothered me. I'm not sure if it bothered it deeply a lot of other people, but it really did bother me. I just felt it was that a certain part of us were being taken advantage of.
Now, what was it like to actually go home then? You finally you get yourself discharged. You go on back home. What happens next?
What, when I got home?
Yeah.
Well, I got home. I walked off that plane. As I said, this back before they had these, the plane just pulled up to the fence, and you get off, put a little stairway down, you get off, and there's my wife holding my baby boy, who was a lot bigger than I thought he was going to be, because now he's a year old, and a little over a year old. There's my brother, my mother, my aunt, and I said, the first step I took on that platform was the first step of the rest of my life, and it was great. I got home, took off my uniform, shaved I started after R&R. I started growing a short timer mustache, so I shaved a mustache. I don't like facial hair, so I did that, and I always just visited for a couple, 3 days, and my wife and I and baby, we just took off and took a little vacation, just drove around and saw. I had a friend, actually he was my best man when I got married, but he was my best man by default, because we had to push our wedding up, as I told you, and my brother was out of the Marines going to school, and he was in summer school, and he couldn't get out of an exam, so. And I'm Catholic, so back then your best man and maid of honor had to be Catholic. So everybody else in my wedding party wasn't, but a friend of my brother's was coming in for the wedding, so I made him. He was my best man, and he'd sent me. He would send out to the field the care packages Mama wouldn't send. He had a buddy that was on the vice squad. He lived in Rochester, New York, so he would bust. When they busted a porno shop or something, he'd take some of the magazines and we'd put them in a box and a lot of airline little bottles of whiskey and stuff, and send it to us every, about once a month. We'd get something from him. Everybody always looked forward to my Guardian Ed's care packages. But I just took a trip, just poked around, went up to Canada for a little while, and did that, and started looking for a job. And
what kind of work did you go into?
Well, I got into what today would be called human resources. It was kind of funny. I had veterans return rights to Bendix, the aerospace company, but I didn't really like what I was doing there. So I was just looking around, and there was this big plant this company was really expanding, and they had 6 unions under one roof, and the industrial relations manager wanted somebody to handle discipline. So he looked at me and said, "You're about 6'4", just back from the war. I think you're perfect." So he hired me. So I stayed in that kind of work for the rest of my life, or rest of my working life. Man.
All right. And at what point did you wind up in Michigan?
Well, I'd worked for this guy. Well, the fellow that hired me, he got promoted out, and they brought in a guy to replace him, and then I left. I wanted to run my own show, so to speak, and I left, and then the fellow, but I became very friendly with the guy who, my original boss's replacement. We became very, very friendly, very close. And he moved up here. He took a job as a senior VP at Wolverine Worldwide, and he had an opening, and he called me up, said, oh no, he didn't call me up because we met for dinner because we were living in Iowa, and we were back and having dinner with he and his wife. And I said, how would you guys like to come back to Michigan? And my wife said, when? That's how we ended up there. So they hired me, came up there. So, but I think I got one thing accomplished for veterans, because I came back and I was a little upset because I couldn't take advantage of the GI Bill, because I had 4 years of veterans-funded education. So my father-in-law was kind of a minor politician in Indiana, and they would have these smokers, these political smokers, and as everybody goes down and kick in a few bucks for the guy's campaign fund, and you drink and eat and have a good time. So at that time, our congressman, he was the Democratic whip in Congress, and he was running, he was working the crowd. In fact, he had graduated the high school I went to. And he saw my father-in-law and said, hey, Jim, how's it going? This and that. My father-in-law had a couple too many, and he says, it ain't fair. I said, well, what's not fair? He said, hey, this young man here, my son-in-law, and he introduced me. He said, he just come back from the war in Vietnam, and he can't get the GI Bill. Oh, why? Well, his dad was killed in the war, so in the Second World War, so he went to school under War Orphans Education, and VA says you can only have 48 months. He said, but they did it what his dad would do. His dad would have paid his way through school if he wasn't killed, so he should get something for his service. And Bradham said, I agree with you. I think right. And about a year and a half later, they passed a rider that I could get, people like me could get 12 more months. So I like to say that, obviously the legislation wasn't named for me, but I'd like to say that maybe I influenced that. Right. But
okay. Now, if you look back on the whole thing now, how do you think your time in the service wound up affecting you?
Well, it's just like one of those diseases you can never get rid of. I'd be a fool to say it, but there were some wonderful times and there were some terrible times. Met a lot of good people that were, and I think that's probably my biggest regret. We talked about the replacement, people coming in and out, and I know people by their radio call signs. Maybe they're, like I can tell you my company commander name. I don't know what his name was. He was always 2-6. So a nickname and this and that. And I wish I would have gotten. In a way, I wish I would have gotten more contact information, because when I came home, I didn't want anything to do with any of that. I'm just going to get on with my life and build my life. But later, as you reflect and just, hey, I'd like to, it'd be fun. Just sit around, drink a few beers, and spit, scratch, and tell lies, and that kind of thing. But then on the other hand, with some of these guys, you don't know if their name's on the wall in Washington or not, so it could be kind of bittersweet. I did have contact with one other person, and he was an officer. He was an FO, and I often wondered what happened to him, because we were about this physically. We were about the same. We were tall, and back then tall and skinny. Now I'm just tall. And he was an airborne ranger, really gung-ho guy, but just our OTC. And his dad and his uncle were with some big prestigious law firm in LA, and he was going to always go to law school. Right? I'm going to come home. He had a little more time to do in the Army, but like 6 months or so, and I'm going to do my 6 months or 8 months or whatever it was, and then go to law school, and got something nailed there, and that'd be good. So I knew his last name, and we have alumni. So the first CAV has a pretty active division association. I call it my alumni association. So I get this call oh geez, must be 3-4 years ago, around Thanksgiving. It's the Monday of Thanksgiving week. And it's this guy. He said, hey, I'm going to be in Lansing. Why don't you come on up? Let me say hi. Sure, I'll be up. Well, I go up there. Well, he tells me where to go. Make a long story short, he never did go to law school. Figured out why he was in the Army, why he was stateside. He said, I always wanted to learn how to fly. So he used a GI Bill to go to flight school and became an airline pilot. Had to retire at 60. So then he became a corporate pilot, and he was Senator Kerry's wife's pilot for. She's heir to the Heinz fortune.
Right.
Was her pilot for a while, 3 or 4 years, but now he's Magic Johnson's pilot. And he was coming to bring Magic over to Lansing to celebrate, Thanksgiving with his family. So I didn't know this, he tells me this, so I go over there and waiting in the terminal, and Magic comes out, and his family's there waiting for him. He sees me there, and he comes up. Oh, you're waiting for my pilot, aren't you? Yeah, well, war buddies. Yeah, I introduced. We had a beautiful conversation with the guy. Then Clark came down. Originally, he was going to come over to the house and stay, but Magic said, well, him, the co-pilot, just take the plane back to L.A. and come back and pick me up, so. Which was nice because it cost a lot of money to do that. So I met him. So I couldn't. He was in Benton Harbor a couple weeks ago. He gave me a call, but I couldn't make it to Benton Harbor that day. But so that's the one guy I had contact with, and it was so strange. But there's a lot of these fellas. I would, I guess you didn't realize how much of a part of you they are, and then. And they just, like Helmwer's book, we were soldiers once and young. I guess we're always soldiers, but we don't stay young.
It's the one last question that I got here, when you got back, now you're in a time when a lot of public opinion is turning against the war more dramatically. There's more of the negative news content. Coverage, there's protests, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. Did you pay much attention to any of that, or did that register at all with you, or did you just go about your business and not worry about it?
Well, I never had anybody, spit on me or throw something, because if they would have, I would have taken them out. But I never was exposed to that. And I'm not really sure how intense that was. Of course, the Midwest is something a little different. I did follow the war on the news. I was really, especially when they went into Cambodia. I know the Cav was going there, but I did follow that. I personally felt that. I didn't know why we were fighting. I thought I come to the conclusion that it was a colossal waste, and we should have just said, "Hey, we're out of there," and or do something else, and because I wonder if things would have been different if we would have just taken over the country and put in like a MacArthur to be czar, like they did in Japan after the Second World War, and give them people because the Vietnamese people, they're great people, industrious, they're brave people, and these guys were just fighting for their country, and I always thought it was a mistake. I never really questioned why I grew up under the domino theory that, geez, if we don't stop them there, we're going to be fighting them in Cedar Springs, and we viewed communism as this, this monolith that was going to be, it's one size fits everybody, and they're godless, and we're going to be this kind of thing, and that wasn't the case. And it's just some little farmer shooting at you every now and then, and they're doing something. It takes incredible courage to do that when he knows what you're going to do back to him. And I just felt that it was that our policy was wrong, and Although on the other hand, I didn't like the anti-war protests because they were vilifying the soldiers when they guys were just doing what they had to do. They didn't have any choice about it. They were reluctant soldiers, and we were reluctant soldiers. So I didn't like that part of it, and I thought for a large number of them, their motives were, there were no geopolitical concerns in their motive. They were just scared that they'd have to go in and do something, and it was, I think, the wrong war in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it was there, and I feel sorry for the people that didn't make it back, because it's, when you do something like that, I mean, you can read all the books in the world and all of this and all of that, and it's there's no glory in fighting a war. Yeah. There's just a base reality that's terrifying, and it's just so. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but I think it was.
Ultimately, part of why we do this is that we want, as best we can, to record what was the experience like, and what do the people who were there actually think of it. Sometimes people find out about the project and what I'm doing. The first assumption is probably kind of like a lot of the teenage war protesters' assumption. They don't really know anything, so they figure, oh, you're out to glorify the war or something like that. And no, you're not watching the interviews, are you?
Yeah.
That not to be what comes out.
Well, although I'll tell you, if you want to glorify something, it's there was I don't know about other people that you interviewed, but we had an inordinate amount of pride in our unit in the first Cav. An inordinate amount of pride. I mean, you see that patch on somebody's right shoulder, they were in combat, and now they're your brother forever. I mean, regardless of what war it was. I mean, I had a National Guard guy save my bacon in the post 9/11 Atlanta airport. He had a Cav patch on, and I had a problem with a security guy, and this one, the guys were there with rifles, and he come by, and he took care of it. First Cav, hey, so here we go. But, so that way, there's a lot of. I took a lot of pride in my unit. I still do, to this day. I think the best compliment somebody could give me is say, "Hey, you're a Sky Trooper," and that's what I was, and that's what I am. But war as such is, you don't want to glorify it. But I have to say, for the record, I'm not sure about anybody else's experience, but we never were chased off the field of battle by any of these guys. Maybe we should have been, but we never were. So if we lost it, we lost it. I don't even like the term "we lost the war." We just chose not to continue with it anymore, because I mean, we had I mean, it was incredible what we could have done and did. But
ultimately, there's a limit to what the military can actually do in some of these situations. And if the root problem was political, it almost didn't matter. Not even what you were in.
And what did General Grant say? He said, I'm probably not quoting him right, but he said, "I can't think of any problem between people that would have to be resolved by violence or with violence," or something like that. And I think he was right.
All right.
Anyway, okay.
That makes a pretty good point to conclude on, I think. So thanks for taking the time.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate it.
All right.
I hope it works out, and I wish you every success in your endeavor. And one of these days, when you get the thing I gave you, just take a look at it.
Yeah, there could be a book in the works, people. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll autograph them for you. Yeah.